You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level. Rapping with Dr. Jacqueline connects you with experts from all over the world to help you take charge of your career, your business, and your life. Rap along with us. Visit drjacqueline.com to learn how to become a guest or a sponsor. And now, the doctor is in.
Hello and welcome to Rapping with Dr. Jacqueline, stories of hope, inspiration, and overcoming adversity. We are live on Business Talk Radio as always, and also live streaming on social media. I am your host and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. I am a certified life and career coach. And with me today, returning to Rapping with Dr. Jacqueline, is Anita Meeks. Anita, welcome to the program.
Hi, how are you? I'm so excited to be with you again.
I'm excited to be with you again and hear what you've been up to. So, Anita, you are an ambassador and an advocate for the Epilepsy organization, correct?
I am.
That's wonderful. And, you know, when we last met, it was, oh my gosh, I think it was months ago. And you were sharing your story about what you had been through and how you've been misdiagnosed and all the ramifications that came from that. So would you like to share a little bit about your story from the beginning?
Oh, sure. So back in September, Labor Day weekend of 2020, I was diagnosed with epilepsy for the first time. I had had my very first grand mal seizure Labor Day weekend. And interesting enough, I was told that I had had it my entire life. And so that's the interesting caveat about all of this, is that I have been persevering through epilepsy, not realizing I had had moments, and I was self-justifying it with a lot of excuses, some of the unexplained moments or behaviors. And recently, 2020 was a really, or the last 2.5 years were kind of stressful for me, and that's one of the many triggers. But that then led to insomnia and other things, that the perfect storm was being brewed, and led to my grand mal seizure in September.
Thank you for sharing that. I know from speaking with you before that it was really a frightening and uncertain future. And look at you now.
It's still uncertain, right? Nothing in life is guaranteed. I mean, I had my career for 27 years and we all have hiccups here and there, but to be diagnosed with epilepsy, which has and will forever change me, for the good, of course, right? We only become bigger and stronger for some of the adversities that we face. But yeah, I mean, it's still uncertain to a degree, but I have a better grasp around the whole concept of having epilepsy now.
And for those who are watching or listening and they're not really sure what epilepsy is, can you share with us your understanding of it?
Sure. So epilepsy is when you have 2 or more unexplained and undefined seizures. One, believe it or not, so many people are suffering from epilepsy and aren't even diagnosed, because they can be very confused with ADHD and panic and anxiety. So epilepsy, you earn that title when you have 2 or more undefined seizures.
And a seizure is it what we've seen on television or in movies where someone's rolling around and trying not to swallow their tongue?
No, so it's actually, there's that's more the minority than it is the majority of epilepsy patients. So you look at me, I look perfectly normal, right? You think, oh, she's fine, there's nothing wrong. But the bottom line is there's over 40 different types of seizures and moments that you can have. And there's partial seizures, there's silent, absent seizures, there's drop attacks. Just dropping to the ground is not something that those that have epilepsy do. Typically, we are very high functioning individuals. It's just that our brain waves are just on overload, right? So depending on what part of your brain is infected and susceptible to the seizure will depend on what type of seizure you have.
So you get this diagnosis, and I imagine that, maybe there was some take a breath, because at least now you have a diagnosis. Is that right?
Yeah. So, yes, I'm very grateful for the diagnosis because I had misdiagnosed myself as having anxiety and panic attacks for a lot of what I was going through. I had a lot of stress and insomnia happening, and I was binge drinking on the weekends to suppress the last couple of years a lot of stuff that was happening in my life, and I just couldn't shut my brain down, but my brain was just going in overload. And so I was justifying my self-diagnosis of having anxiety and panic attacks because of everything that I was going through these last few years. And so, yes, when I was diagnosed with epilepsy, as scared as I was, as I soon accepted this diagnosis as being, a lifelong diagnosis that I would have, I was very grateful. It was nice to know because now I can manage it and help others give them some light and hope to living with epilepsy, because there are challenges and you have to figure out what your triggers are, and you have to, there's just ways you can live a healthy and productive life with it.
Thank you for sharing that. And as you know, this is a show about hope, inspiration, and overcoming adversity. And the second half of the show, we're going to get to the hope and the inspiration and how you've overcome adversity. But just to further hear more about your journey. So you get the diagnosis, and then what does the treatment process look like?
So when I first got diagnosed, and the doctor called me immediately after having an EEG, and that's something that I talk about very openly too, because there are certain tests that can help you identify between having epilepsy or ADHD, etc. And the EEG is one of the ways to really narrow down whether or not you have epilepsy. Now, I say that, but at the same time, if your brain is not active at the moment, there could come back as you not having it and having a very normal EEG. And you can be easily misdiagnosed because of that test. So it really just depends on where, when your brain is active. For me, it's active all the time because I have generalized seizures, which means my entire brain is constantly, very active. So it was very scary in the beginning. And the first neurologist was not an epilepsy neurologist, and therefore had given me a very high dosage of medication, which is very common, unfortunately, when individuals are first diagnosed with epilepsy. And I had spoken with the neurologist after, I don't know the exact time, but a few weeks into it, and told him that this wasn't working for me because I couldn't even get off the couch. Here I am, a very high energy, outgoing individual. Now you're asking me not to move off the couch. That doesn't work for me. So I went, he highly encouraged me to continue with the medication and to let it adjust to my body. And I went against him. And I don't encourage everyone to do what I did. It was a risk I was willing to take. I knew what would happen and what the worst effect would be. And I was willing to take that risk. So I, on my own, took about 500 milligrams less than what he had prescribed me. And I started to feel a little bit better and have a little bit more energy. And then I'm like, oh, I may be on to something. So I felt better. And so I decided to push it a little further and take another 500 less. I had to stop at that because I knew there's a certain milligrams that you have to take to even for the medications to take effect. So as I started feeling better, I started eating, drinking, and sleeping. I dropped everything in my world and just really started focusing on understanding what epilepsy was, how it affects the mind, the body, your activities, etc. And during this time, I kept coming on to new light and new education that was helping me. And I knew what the side effects of the medication was. So I did some further research and started experimenting with some things that would help with the side effects of the medication. And some of it did not work. As an example, medical marijuana works for a lot of people. It didn't work for me. I had an adverse effect on it. It was just horrible. So I never ever will even engage in that type of a conversation for me. Now, I did find vitamins over the counter that are really, really helping me with the side effects. And now I've got it down to where I take medication just at nighttime and not during the day, because sometimes it affects your highs and lows of energy. So I've learned a lot through self-advocacy. I've had to work really, really super duper hard. And that's something that I'm really passionate about with other individuals, because this neurologist, the first one, was not a neurologist who specialized in epilepsy. They just, sometimes people will just, because you have a title does not make you an expert. And so when I finally did get to a neurologist that specialized in epilepsy, I had already came up with my own game plan and figured it out. And she was incredibly supportive and still is to this day.
Thank you again for sharing that. It sounds like, from what I heard, that not only is it important for you to be an advocate and look out for yourself, but also don't blatantly just take whatever information is given to you by your physician. Do some research and then see what works for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I see it way too often now that I'm knee deep in it, that, we just assume because somebody has a title that they're an expert. In reality is they're not. I had, another example. I was having seizures in front of a medical doctor, and he didn't even recognize I had a medical condition wrong. So if medical doctors aren't recognizing it, it just validates how uneducated our world really is on epilepsy.
That's really frightening. But I think the great news is that because of your due diligence and because of the fact that you really decided to make your self-care a priority, that you've been able to make a lot of progress.
I have, from 5 months ago. I have.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. Stay with us on Rapping with Dr. Jacqueline. Located at 121 Haddon Avenue in Westmont, New Jersey, is Margie Cidrone, artisan jeweler. Margie's been in business for more than 30 years. She works with her clients to create custom pieces of jewelry to reflect their personality and help them make their own bold statement. Starting in the renowned Jewelers Row in Center City, Philadelphia in 1988, Margie works directly with her clients to develop one-of-a-kind pieces such as necklaces, engagement rings, wedding bands, unique watches and tennis bracelets, as well as a myriad of rings and earrings for everyone in your family. She also has worked directly with Dr. Jacqueline over the years, creating unique pieces of jewelry to reflect her personality. She does pearl stringing and repairs on site at 121 Haddon Avenue. Call or text Margie at 215-384-7155. Margie Cidrone Jewelry is open by appointment only. Make your own bold statement.
Hi, my name is Zane Carson Caruth, and I'm the author of this book, The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever.
Reading is magic. Studies have shown that reading to your children lays the foundation for greater success in life. Reading helps develop language and vocabulary skills. It helps improve memory, and it encourages curiosity and inspires creativity. The benefits are immeasurable, and as a parent, you'll benefit too. In only 10 or 15 minutes a day, you'll be creating more memories and a bonding experience that will last for years to come. So take time to read to your children. Read them books about things that engage and interest them. Tales of fairies and magic fascinate children, and as everyone knows, the Tooth Fairy is at the top of the list. If your child loves magic, wands, adventure, and what child doesn't, you'll love reading them books from the trademarked series The World's First Tooth Fairy Ever. Follow along as Abella, the world's first tooth fairy, accidentally starts the tooth fairy tradition. Learn the tricks of being a professional tooth fairy in the book Abella Starts a Tooth Fairy School. Your child's imagination will soar as you read the adventures of Abella and her magic wand. These wonderful books are available at worldsfirsttoothfairy.com and at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Walmart.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is, the most radio on the planet, and the other stations are tuned into.
You're listening to Business Talk Radio, where we take business to the next level.
Welcome back to Rapping with Dr. Jacqueline, and my guest is Anita Meeks. Anita, it's great to see you here today. Thank you so much for sharing your story that is so inspirational.
Thank you.
So you gave us some of your journey, some information about leading up to your diagnosis with epilepsy and then your treatment plan. So since that time, you have really thrown yourself full in to be an ambassador and an advocate for epilepsy. What's that journey been like for you?
There's so much work to be done. Gosh, what's it been like? It's heartbreaking to see so many individuals really give up hope and fall into depression. I mean, relationships and marriages are destroyed. Individuals, they're just giving up hope to their diagnosis and giving into it instead of where there's so much opportunity to own that you have it and to do the best that you can with research and options. And I'm a huge advocate with self-advocacy, especially when something isn't working for you and doesn't feel right. You have to figure out what will work for you, because everyone is so different, especially in our community of epilepsy.
Well, I really admire you jumping in. I think that's really incredible that you get a diagnosis that does change your life. And some people would take that and just maybe crawl into bed and just say, why me? I don't want to deal with this. But you have decided to go the other way and share your story and be a role model and advocate for others. So kudos to you on that.
Thank you. It's not easy. I do have my days where I'm like, you want, like, it's just, you just don't know what direction you're going. There are days where, the energy is high and lows. And so when I was feeling those highs and lows, I decided to figure out a way that it would be a win-win where I could manage my epilepsy, but yet have the energy to persevere to the best of my ability with my life and my new norm. Like, you look at me, you don't know that I have epilepsy. But if I shared with you, I've had little petite ones like behind my eyes, you'll see me like blink or something. They only last a couple seconds, right? So there's just so much awareness that we need to bring to the general public. Because we don't talk about epilepsy. We talk about breast cancer. We talk about heart disease. We talk about MS. We talk about everything. But seldom do we ever talk about epilepsy when it is one of the biggest neurological disorders there is, right? And the reason why we don't talk about it is because the people who are suffering, they're living in silence, fear of judgment, embarrassment, humiliation, taking the risk of losing their job, losing friendships. There's so much judgment that goes behind it. And I'm willing to put myself out there because I know who I am at the core, and I'm not here for anybody else but to help others and serve others. So I believe, this epilepsy journey has given me even a further purpose, because I've experienced the pain and the suffering and the humiliation and the name calling and the judgment. So I feel the pain, but yet I have a voice to say, hey, this is just wrong on so many levels, and let me tell you why.
I think that's really wonderful. And, you bring up so many important points. I have ulcerative colitis, and I lived in shame for most of my life with that too. So everybody has something that maybe they're keeping inside that might be better if they let it out. And once you do share it, yes, there might be others who are going to have judgment or make comments. That's on them, right? That's on them.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I've grown so much where I'm like, that you and I remember when we first spoke, I was in tears. Like, I was so hurt and really devastated with the response. When I was going through this undiagnosed, I was having, the stress and the insomnia, some unusual behaviors would happen from time to time, and I was being judged and called names, and that was devastating for me. And I remember you and I talking about that. And now I realize, now that I have so much more clarity, now I want to fight for those that are suffering and going through the same thing that I went through. Because, like I said, we didn't ask for this, and we are not less than because we have epilepsy and we can function, and some cannot. And it is my hope to help those that are struggling with where they're at, to give them some light and hope and a different perspective and a different strategic plan to live a better and healthier life. And I'm going to make enemies along the way, because I speak very clearly that just because, people have a title doesn't make them an expert. And sometimes we're too quick to, I've witnessed and seen way too often, just giving out medications. And sometimes it's not always in the best interest. Sometimes there's too much medication being given. And I believe in my case, that's exactly what had happened.
So I was going to ask you about that. When you shared you had weaned back, I guess, by 500 milligrams and then even more. So that sounds like a big number to me. I don't know. Is it?
It is. I mean, all said and done. And I ended up with 1,000 less milligrams. When I was taking what he had given me originally, again, he wasn't an epilepsy neurologist, but how would I know that? I didn't even know there was neurologists that specialized just in epilepsy and really focus on patients that suffer from epilepsy. And so you assume because it's a neurological disorder that, and he has the title of a neurologist, he'll know exactly what the game plan is and exactly what to do. Well, no, that's not the case. And I made it very clear that his recommendation wasn't working for me. We needed to come up with a new game plan, or I needed to find another neurologist. And I decided that I kind of fired him, right? I was telling somebody else, it's like having a relationship. You have to feel good about who your medical team is and who you're working with to ensure that you're living the best life that you can live. And I'm not one that just because somebody speaks to me and says something to me, I'm just going to assume that that's the truth and that's the reality and that's the way it's going to always be. If it doesn't feel right and I don't feel right, it's just not going to work for me. And so you have to feel really good about your medical team and your medical care. And that's another audience that I speak to is on self-advocacy. So I have different pockets of audiences. I'm still trying to put it all together as I really don't know where this is leading.
It sounds to me that you've emphasized a few times that the power of following your own intuition is really pivotal.
Absolutely. Without a shadow of a doubt. without a shadow of doubt, because I do believe that my life would look much differently. I still, am rebuilding and figuring out, my next chapter, but I do believe it would look significantly different if I would have followed the guidance of what didn't feel right to me through another neurologist who wasn't someone who specialized in epilepsy.
So for folks out there who have symptoms, and again, I want to have you share what those symptoms might be. What is the path to get help?
So
symptoms, first of all.
Yeah, symptoms. Thank you. The lights. So part of it, you'll notice, and we talked about this, the lights kind of distracted me a little bit. But so symptoms there's several symptoms. There could be drop attacks where for me, I would just be standing there and my legs would give out on me. And it would look like I was either klutzy or I had too much to drink, or, you could self-justify it in a lot of different ways. You can make 1,001 excuses, right? So there was times where, again, I would just be standing there, my legs would give out, and I'd be conscious, I'm fully aware of what had happened, but that's a drop attack seizure. For me, my eyes, I have it behind my eyes, so I'll blink, or I'll look up, or it'll look like I'm rolling my eyes from time to time, but they only last a couple seconds, so you don't really pay attention to those kind of behaviors. So those are some of the things that a lot of people also, anxiety and panic attacks look a lot like seizures. For me, I swore I was having anxiety and panic attacks. I remember telling someone, I felt like there was this war going off in my brain, and I couldn't explain it. It was just I couldn't even explain what was happening. And I just assumed it was a panic attack or anxiety. The reality is I was having a seizure. So I think it's really incredibly important. I know that I learned a very valuable lesson. If something's not feeling right, stop making excuses and thinking that you know what's wrong with you and self-diagnosing yourself. ADHD, anxiety, panic attacks, they look a lot like epilepsy and seizures. And they often all get mixed in and misdiagnosed within each other. So I really highly encourage, because medicine can affect people. If you're not on the right medication and you're misdiagnosed, it's not going to help you. So you have to really pay attention and really do the work and research, because nobody else is going to stand up for yourself more than you will. And nobody cares more about yourself than you. So I'm really big on that, is self-advocacy. And especially when it comes to panic attacks and ADHD and anxiety, it goes right along with epilepsy, and it gets misdiagnosed all the time.
Thank you for highlighting what the symptoms are that you know of. I think that's a tremendous help. And also, I think you brought to light another point, which is just because someone went to medical school, because they're a physician or they're a nurse or whatever it is, they may have the best intentions, but they might not know exactly what's right for you. So to your point, you have to be your own best advocate and do the research, and then maybe get a second or even a third opinion about whatever the treatment plan is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Never take for granted just because somebody tells you something. And I always reference, if you have 5 doctors that you've had the same conversation with and they don't know each other and they give you the exact same response, then maybe you consider that to be the truth. But I guarantee if you put 5 doctors in front of you and they give you 5 different opinions, thoughts, and suggestions, you got to keep going until you figure it out. You know your body better than anybody else. And
Absolutely.
You just can't give in to this disorder.
Don't give up. Don't give in. I love it. Anita, believe it or not, we are at the top of our show already. I can't believe it. So what's the best way for people to reach you? We are scrolling your banner, but for people listening on Business Talk Radio, the information we have is, I'll read it for you, Epilepsy Ambassador and Advocate. You've got a Facebook group called Living with Resiliency.
No, it's Living Resilient. It's not with. Take out the with. Yeah, that's okay. It's all right. If you go to my personal Facebook page, I don't know if it's linked on my personal Facebook page, but I'm happy to connect with anybody on Facebook.
Perfect. So it's Living Resiliently. And
Yes.
the number that we have for the Epilepsy Foundation or organization is 800-332-1000. So, Anita, any final words that you want to leave with our viewers and our listeners?
No, just I'm all about self-advocacy. Don't just really take care of yourself. Go with your gut instinct, follow it, pursue it, and just don't assume because somebody tells you something that it's factual. It's so important to feel good about what you're doing in your life personally and professionally.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being a guest here. We'll look forward to having you back and hearing where your journey takes you next and all of the people that you've helped by being so vocal about it. So thank you again, Anita.
Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Absolutely. And thank you to everybody watching today. We appreciate your support. We've got another show coming up at 5:45, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. That is our variety show. And we've got a brand new co-host, and we've also got a special guest for today. So we'll look forward to seeing you over there in just a few minutes. Take care. Thank you.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Homes for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.